In part 2, we'll look at how to create the logic that will govern agent journeys through our scenario by constructing agent actions. To create an agent action, you can go to the Activities tab and click on Agent Action. Now, this first action that we're going to create is the initialize passengers action, and we are going to do a couple of things to them. So we will have a list of actions which will apply to the agents, and the first thing that we're going to do, there's a couple of things. The first thing that we're going to do is choose an action from set, and so we want there to be 2 entries here, and if we normalize that, we'll get 50% of each. If 50% of the people, we want them to have the boarding pass token because we're going to assume that they will have checked in online prior to arriving at our little airport here. And the other 50% of them, they will do nothing. And then for the second thing that we want to do to the agents, we want there again to be choose action from set, and there will be 2 entries here, and what we want there to be is 80% of them will be economy passengers and 20% of them will be business class passengers. And so again, what we will do is give tokens. In this case, we want 80% of them to have the economy token, and you can also do it by give the business class token here, and select it, and add it that way. So now we've got the very basic setup for our agents when they're created, and we'll get to applying this in just a moment. In addition to the description here, if you click on the chevrons, you can also see the flow chart of what's going to happen. So when this action gets applied, 50% of them will get the boarding pass, 50% of them will do nothing, 80% of them will get the economy token, and 20% of them will get the business token, and then that's the end of the action. So what we're going to do is to ensure that our agents are actually initialized when we want them. What we're going to do is look at the properties of our curve object here. So most objects in the scene will actually have action slots, and for the portal, for example, there are a couple of slots that are available. One is when the agents enter the simulation, so any agent creation rule which uses this portal, the agents that are created at this portal will have this action, the action in this slot, applied to them as they enter the simulation. So we're going to actually do again a list of actions, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to refer to the named action that we just created, and there's only one, it's the init packs. So now we have the very first thing that happens to them is they're going to get initialized with maybe with a boarding pass and either an economy or business class designation. And then in addition to that, we also want to have a bit of logic about what the agents do depending on the conditions that they are created with from the init packs. Because this gets applied instantaneously, the very next thing you do, the agents will have the tokens from the init packs action. And so, for example, we can say that we want there to be a test. So if not, agent has token boarding pass. So basically, if they don't have a boarding pass, then what we want them to do is to seek the process start, which is the dispatch, which joins together the business and economy queues. And so now what we've done, very simply, is we've said, right, the agents that don't have a boarding pass, we want them to go check in. And then, because we're going to set this up such that the agents are not going to have a final goal when we're created. We're going to have to direct them through the simulation. And so what we're going to say here is if the agents have the token, boarding pass, then what we want them to do is seek this portal. And there we have it. So we've set up the named action, which we've referenced here, which initializes our agents with the correct properties. And then based on the properties that they have, whether or not they have a boarding pass, we are going to get them to do either go to check-in so they can get a boarding pass, or go to security and just bypass the ticketing process altogether. One thing that we do need to do, because when we set up our agent journey we're not going to specify a destination, is in the arrived at waypoint slot for our security area, what we're going to do is have the agents exit the simulation. So what we've done in effect now is anybody who's checked in online is going to show up here, be sent here, and remove themselves from the simulation. Anybody who doesn't have a boarding pass is now going to be sent to our business and economy accumulator queues, and then they'll get processed eventually here at the ticketing counters. For the sake of completion, one of the things that we ought to do as well is when we look at the properties of the ticketing counters, we really ought to say that when these people are finished their ticketing process, they ought to be given the boarding pass token, because really they shouldn't be going to the security area without it. So now we've set up the actions which will enable the agents to, there's one more thing we need to do in here. Again, because our agents are not going to have a destination specified in their journey, we're also going to have to give them a seek portal and our security. So finally, what we'll do is we'll set up a very simple journey for our agents, and let's say 125 people over 10 minutes. And they're going to come in at this portal. We're not going to assign them a destination, because in this case we're relying on the actions that we've set up to do the directing of the agents around the simulation. So some of them, if they have a boarding pass, will be sent directly to security and they will leave, and some of them will be sent to be processed at the ticketing area. So let's give that a run and see what we get here. So we can see people flowing across our simulation, and they are in fact going, and everybody is being processed at the counters, but you'll note that they're not being processed for very long. So one of the things we need to do here as well is go in and adjust the processing properties for these objects. And so right now, when the agents leave the accumulator queues and go here, we're basically saying that they need to enter at the beginning, at the geometric beginning of it, which is fine. We don't want there to be an infinite capacity. We want there to be a fixed capacity of 1 at the counters. And we want there to be a triangular distribution of, say, a minimum of 20 seconds, a maximum of 60 seconds, and a mode of 30 seconds. And if we rerun, now we can see that our agents do in fact spend some time at the ticketing counters, and this also results occasionally in a bit of queuing at the accumulator queues. if we want to, for example, make a visual differentiation between our economy and business class people, that's as simple as going into the display properties for the simulation run that we've created. And what we'll do is we'll say we want a custom color for our agents, and then we want there to be a filter, a simple filter as well. And what we'll do is we'll say that any agent that's holding the token business class will be green. And we just click on this to refresh it. And now we can see that some of our agents are white, some of them are green, and depending on whether or not they are holding or not holding the business token. And you can verify that by clicking on an agent and looking at the observe thing, and we can see that yes, in fact, this agent has probably just left and is holding the business class token.